Hello, it's Andy again from the Egocast channel, and today me and Steve are gonna try and figure out how to solve the problem of who gets a platform and who doesn't. Here we go.
Hey folks, welcome to the Ramble. I wanted to follow up a little bit on a video that I posted last week called How Long Are We Going to Keep Arguing About This?
And if you want a good laugh, I highly recommend it.
And in that video, I suggested that the process through which we defeat bad ideas is actually a two-step process. We don't just defeat bad ideas by countering them with good ideas. We then have to follow that up with denying platforms to people who push the ideas that we've decided are bad ideas.
Well, that doesn't entirely sound like a good idea.
We have to stop arguing over the bad ideas and stop treating the bad ideas as though they are topics for debate and argument and as though they have legitimacy.
I would go as far as to say that just about any idea has merit as far as a debate is concerned, but it's how willing people are to stick to those ideas even if they're proven wrong. Therein lies the problem, Steve.
And one of the most common objections to that argument is to ask, well, who's going to make these decisions? Who decides what is a bad idea? Who decides who gets a platform and who doesn't?
I think that's a very good question, Steve.
It's the appeal to the gray area, the appeal to ambiguity, the argument that says, well, outlawing hate speech might sound like a good idea at first, but how do we determine what speech is hate speech? You know, or cracking down on online harassment on Twitter and YouTube, etc. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but who decides what is harassment and what is allowable? And they don't really have an answer.
But do you have an answer, Steve?
They don't really have any idea how to do that. Their point is you just shouldn't bother trying to solve the problem at all, because as long as there's a gray area where the judgment could go either way, in their mind, it's better to just pretend that the problem doesn't exist.
Well, you're putting it in a weird sense, but it sounds to me kind of like our system of law, that some people say that they would rather have 100 people who are guilty go innocent to keep one innocent person from going to jail wrongly. Now, I mean, I can certainly see a point in that, you know. You don't see a point in that?
You know, and just don't try to regulate it. Don't try to deal with it at all. Just keep your hands completely off. Because if there's going to be certain times when you won't be sure what the right decision is, then you should just don't make any decisions about anything.
Well, I think a decision has been made. And the decision that's been made is, if there's a gray area, you just kind of let it go because it's a gray area. And better to allow something in a gray area than to not allow anything at all from gray areas. The world is not full of black and white, Steve. It just isn't. There are all manner of shades. It's a spectrum. You love spectrums, right?
It's a stifling tactic. It's a suppression tactic. It's a way of saying, oh, don't stop trying to solve this problem. You'll never find a perfect solution, so just stop trying to solve the problem.
Do you have a solution, Steve?
So that's one reason why I think that it's just not a very good objection, not a very substantive objection. But the other reason is I think that it misunderstands either honestly or willfully. It misunderstands what it's actually responding to, because the answer to the question, who decides who gets a platform and who doesn't, who decides what speech is good and what speech is bad, or what ideas are good and what ideas are bad?
That's a good question, Steve.
Is the same entities that make those decisions now. The point isn't to take the decisions of who gets a platform and who doesn't, or what speech or what ideas are good and what ideas are bad, away from those entities that are making those decisions now and put them into the hands of different entities. The point is to encourage those making those decisions now to make different decisions.
Well, what decisions would you like them to make, Steve? Only decisions that agree with you? Because I think there's going to be a huge subset of the population that's going to disagree with that. So what happens with them? Do they just get told to go fuck themselves?
So if we're talking about a person who, let's say, a person who is invited to address a group at a college, and let's say that this person who has been invited is a figure who, I don't know, just to pull an example out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah, Milo, we get it. I got you at college. Milo.
Someone who has a history of harassing transgender students at the college from the stage.
In response to that transgender student yelling at him. But, okay, yeah, Milo. Gotcha.
Or threatening to reveal personal information about students at the college who may be from undocumented immigrant families.
Criminals, yeah, Milo. Gotcha. I'm with you, Steve.
Just pulling examples out of the air.
Yeah, you're brilliant. All of your examples are one person. Milo. Gotcha.
And let's say that such a person was invited by a student group, say the college Republicans, just pulling things out of the sky here, to address their group or to participate in some event. And let's say that there are some students in that college community who think that that is a terrible decision and they don't want that person to be invited to their campus to talk. They don't want their college to be a part of giving this person a platform because this person has a history of being abusive and this person says things that are racist and misogynist and anti-feminist and xenophobic and just hateful and hurtful and terrible, and they don't want such a person to be welcomed on their campus, and they don't want their ideas to be granted anything like an air of legitimacy on their campus.
Well, I think that's wrong. I think to have a healthy discourse, you need to have two opposing views.
The solution is not to argue that the college Republicans or the faculty or whatever body it is that ultimately decides this person is allowed to come has that decision taken out of their hands. The point is to prevail upon those decision makers, those gatekeepers, if you will, to make a different decision. And they still would have the right to make whatever decision they're empowered to make. If a bunch of students get together and raise a protest and email and call and show up at offices and say, we don't want this person to come here, the school or the organization or the venue, whatever, would still have the option to decide, in spite of the protests, that the event should continue, that the person who was invited is still allowed to come. They still have the right to make that decision. The point isn't to remove their right to make that decision. The point is to encourage them to make a different decision.
Well, that sounds very much like you're saying the same thing, but you gotta remember, there's two sides to this. So if you're going to encourage them to make different decisions that align with what you think, other people are going to encourage them to make different decisions that don't align with what you think. So what do you do, Steve? What do you do when that body that makes those decisions, when you don't want to take the decision out of their hands, what do you do when they tell you to go fuck yourself and that Milo can speak? Do you just accept it like adults and move on with your life? Or do you start burning shit and breaking windows? Because the latter makes you guys look like bad guys. Right? But you haven't been satisfied yet with just accepting things and moving on. So it's a two-way road, Steve. And this is like a 16-minute video. I'm not going to watch it. He says the same thing over and over and over again. And it's not even worth the time to make the half-an-hour video that it would probably wind up being because it's just silliness through and through. But, Steve, you have to be willing to accept the decisions by those bodies. The whole reason you're making this video at all is because you don't accept the decisions that have been made by those bodies. You want them to make different decisions because you don't like the decisions they've made. Other people do. So, you're kind of being a dick here, and you need to stop.